My lords, as you are aware, the war with the Prethoryn Scourge continues. I have standing orders to obtain and report as much valuable intel as I can, and today I bring report from Lieutenant Cage of the 13th Penal Legion regarding the defense of Deliverance, an outpost on the eastern rim of our empire. The tribesman stood on the crest of the hill leaning on his staff, and he looked out across the savannah. The rolling grassland stretched for miles in every direction, a yellow sea rippling gently in the wind, broken only by the occasional tree or rocky outcrop. The tribesman took out a red-coloured root from an animal skin pouch and began to chew on it. As he crushed the root between his teeth, he felt the juices spreading their effect throughout his body, loosening the ties between mortal flesh and spirit. His limbs began to go numb, and he felt his mind ready itself for the journey to the world of the gods. He looked up vaguely into the yellow sky, his gaze attracted by movement. From out of the heavens dropped a star, rapidly falling towards him, straight as an arrow, towards the ridge he stood on. This was an omen, but the tribesman was not sure whether it was of good or evil. For almost 100 heartbeats, the tribesman watched the object growing larger and larger, until it impacted into the ground at the base of the hill in a shower of mud and dust. It looked like a gigantic egg made of thick, leathery skin and bone. The tribesman stood dumbfounded as the egg cracked open, its upper half peeling apart like a grotesque flower. There was a spray of purplish ichor, and a large, gangling shape flopped from the star egg onto the ground. The shape stood and stretched itself up to its full height, the fluids of its cocoon dripping from its body. It was over twice the height of the tribesman, and it stood on 2 thick legs as it unfolded 4 upper limbs, 2 of them wielding wicked-looking claws, easily the length of a man's height. Its purplish flesh was protected by overlapping chinnitus plates. Powerful muscle and sinew rippled under its dark skin. The tribesman's heart began to beat faster and faster, and he felt a cold sweat prickling across his body, making him shiver uncontrollably as the creature looked around, seemingly sniffing the air. With a sudden snap of its monstrous insectoid head, the beast fixed its hellish gaze on the tribesman, snaring him in its glaring red eyes. With a pace startling for its size, the star beast bounded up the slope, its forelimbs ripping at the earth to increase its speed. The tribesman found himself transfixed, unable to move or call for aid. He realized this must be one of the creatures from beyond the void which the newcomers had warned his people about, a predator from beyond the distant stars which had come to consume his soul. As the monster sped towards him, he felt something nagging at the back of his mind, and he realized he could hear a rumbling off to his right. He wanted to look, but he could not tear his eyes away from the demon of destruction racing towards him. The creature was only a few great strides away from him, its claws arching back to deliver a killing attack. Suddenly, without warning, a dazzling storm of light lashed into the void demon, blasting it, sprawling it to the ground, its limbs flailing wildly. Snapping out of the beast's hypnotic spell, he turned to see metal creatures advancing along the ridge, spitting fire at the monstrous intruder. The sky spirits had arrived to save him. The native just keeps on staring dumbly as we open fire. I guess that ain't surprising, considering that to these guys a simple mono-edged knife is a creation of the gods. Dumb locals. If they weren't so stupid, they'd be able to fend for themselves, and we wouldn't be here risking our necks to protect them. My attention is distracted away from the tribesman when the Prethoryn creature gets back to its feet, and the tanks have to fire another volley into it. I ordered the rest of the platoon to take up firing positions, keeping up a steady stream of small rounds fire as we advance. The monster leaps towards Frank's squad, but even as it races towards them, hissing like some sort of damned cobra, they tear it apart with their rifles and heavy machine guns. It kind of collapses in on itself, those huge killing claws folding over its body. I walk up to the corpse to make sure it's truly dead. You can never tell with these fracking Prethorians. Some of them have got powers of regeneration you wouldn't believe. Its dark blood is splattered all over the grass, and it certainly looks like a corpse. To make sure, I level my pistol at its head and fire 6 shots into its fleshy corpse. Okay, I call out to my platoon. mount up, move on. Some of them begin to walk back to the armoured transports, but Frank and some of the others walk over to where I'm standing. It's Letty who speaks first. We've been thinking, Cage, we've got the perfect opportunity here. I mean, we've got a great chance to get the hell out of this fragging outfit once and for all. I look at them, not knowing what they mean. What have you got in mind, I ask. Well, Frank says it's only 2 leagues to the jungle. The Colonel would never find us in there, and there's plenty of food to forage. There's shelter, and everything we need to survive. We just have to turn the transport south and we'll be free men again. Letty's eyes are intense now, beneath her thick curls of hair. She takes another step forward. Think of it, she continues. No more Penal Legion. No more fragging suicide missions for the Colonel. No more spending every minute wondering which of 1,000 kinds of hell we're going to end up in next. Free men, Lieutenant. Free men. I can hardly believe it. I've been fighting with Frank for a year, and Letty has been with the 13th for twice as long as I have. Like me, all these men and women were thrown out of their regular units for breaking the regular army's rules in a big way, and as such have been blessed to serve the rest of their lives in this Penal Legion. We've walked across a dozen battlefields together in the worst fighting you can imagine. We've been through it all. Suicide assaults, rearguard actions, and any other no-hope situation you can think of. It takes a lot more than guts and sheer brawn to survive for that long, and I can't believe they're being so stupid now. What kind of fragging scheme is that, I snap, as their jaws drop. Frank starts getting angry, and I can see the blood rushing to his face. He's going to start trouble if I don't do something right now. Look, boys, I say, trying to calm them down. You haven't thought this through, really. There's a Prethoryn fleet up there in orbit, packed full of specially evolved killing machines, all hungering to eat you up as soon as look at you. The only reason the sky isn't full of them yet is because we managed to pick off the scouts before they found Deliverance, so they ain't sure where to commit their forces. But it's just a stalling action, because we can't get them all. No way. And even if we could, as soon as they find out there's a relief force en route, every bioengineered little fragger they've got is going to come down onto the planet and try and eat us. So the way I see it, you've got 2 choices. There's your plan, which means hanging around in the open. Oh, I know it's the jungle, but they'll still find you when they come. And what kind of chance are you going to have? Or you can come back to me and Deliverance, where there's a big wall to hide behind, 300 more of us, the Sisters of the Shroud Coven, and 2,000 natives to help us fight. Your choice, but if you ain't going my way, I'm going to have to insist you go on foot. The Colonel would skin me if I let you take the transports. It's only midday, so you've got about 8 hours walking until sundown. Plenty of time for you to hole up and wait for the damn Prethoryn to come. I see the realization dawning on their faces, like the sun breaking out from behind a cloud. I thought I taught them better than this, but it just goes to show that some people never learn anything unless they get taught the hard way. Unfortunately, when you're in the Penal Legions, most people who learn the hard way end up as food for the worms. They don't say anything. They just turn around and start walking back to the transports. I take one last look at the Prethoryn corpse just to be safe. It's strange, because any other type of cadaver would be crawling with flesh bugs on this damn planet by now, and there'd be a flock of carrion birds circling overhead. But there's nothing. Not even the bugs will touch the Prethorians. Frag, of all the things in this galaxy, those fraggers make my skin crawl the most. So we finish the Firesweep and I'm back in Deliverance, debriefing with the Colonel in the central keep. I can see the rest of the missionary station out of the window. The mid-afternoon sun is blazing down fiercely. Deliverance is not big, little more than a large village really, only half a mile across with a large central compound, some scattered buildings and the keep itself. I can see the men walking sentry duty on the outer wall, and even at this distance I reckon I can feel their tension. Cage, the Colonel barks, and I snap back from my daydream. There is him, myself, and 2 other lieutenants, Green and Jackson. As I was saying, the Colonel continues pointedly, we've had contact with the relief force. They are no more than 2 days away. If we can hold for just 48 hours, then there'll be a fresh strike force of battleships and 2 whole regiments of clone troops here to relieve us. The wall should be fairly straightforward to defend. It's 18 feet high, so we just have to worry about their runners leaping straight up it. The others we can pick off as they climb the walls. That leaves only the gate, but that's flanked by 2 towers with fixed kinetic batteries, and we can park a tank behind the gates that should make it harder to force them open. Any questions? Jackson paces nervously and wipes a hand through the thin hair plastered across his scalp. He's a skinny man, kind of jittery in my experience. Heaven knows how he had the guts to order his squad to incinerate a Voltum temple after stealing the artifacts inside. The Imperium takes the galaxy's history extremely seriously after all. Perhaps it's more of a surprise that the man did not end up with his head on a pole and his entrails decorating the road. "What about the flyers, sir?" Jackson asks. "Not a problem," the Colonel responds, ice cold as usual. As calm as if we weren't going to be fighting for our damn lives in a few hours, perhaps even a few days. As always, he's wearing full dress uniform, clean shaven like he was fresh out of the barracks. He's a big man. Physically, I mean, but there's more to him than that. Those cold blue eyes and his own force of will make him seem twice as tall as anyone. I wouldn't call it charisma because he's reserved and surly. He just has this sheer presence that fills the room. We have 2 flak cannons on the gate turrets, and this keep has 4-point defense emplacements. If anything tries flying over the wall, we will have the firepower to gun it down. In any case, Cage and his platoon are acting as the mobile reserve behind the walls. If the Prethoryn break through at the wall or the gates, or we get some unexpected visitors dropping in, Cage will move in and bolster the defense. "Anything else?" the Colonel asks. I glance out of the window again. I see the sunlight glittering off highly polished armor, which makes me think of something else. "The sisters, the Shroud Coven, what's the detail there?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "The sisters are under their own authority, and we have no direct control over their actions. I've spoken to the sister in charge and outlined the plan, and I'm sure they'll play their part. The same applies to the levies. They'll be manning the walls, and we will concentrate our guns around the gatehouse. That is where the fighting will be the fiercest. If you need me, that is where you'll find me." No surprise there then. The Colonel is always in the roughest of the fighting, and he always walks out alive. Frag knows what makes him do it. After all, we're here because we done wrong and got caught. But him, what did he do wrong? I mean, what kind of man would choose to lead a Penal Legion? What kind of mind you need to walk into so many situations where you must be blessed by one of the gods to ever take another breath again, and then march straight out and into the next one? He must be mad. I mean, seriously insane. They say he spends his time aboard ship practicing ways to kill himself in the event that he's wounded or captured. I take it back about the Prethorians. There are some things which are a hell of a lot more scary because they're in human form. That's what they say he is, the devil in human form. And when he's ready for a fight like he is now, and you can look into his eyes like I'm doing now, you can believe it. It's about noon the day after, and the Prethoryn have found us. Maybe a scout slipped through the net, which wouldn't be surprising, considering that for big brutes, they can be real sneaky. They can sniff you out 10 miles downwind, and they're covered in scales which shift colours so that you can't see them. Or maybe they just got fed up with waiting and decided to come down and get us wherever we are. I stood on the wall last night and watched the spores coming down. A scary sight, believe me. It was like 10 meteor storms all at once. These falling stars coming down, wave after wave of them. There's an old saying, if you see a shooting star, you can offer a prayer to the old gods of Earth and they'll grant your wish. Well, with all these flaming stars, that's one hell of a lot of prayers to be delivered. But I decided to use all of mine in one go for one big, huge prayer. Do you know what I prayed for? I prayed that those shooting stars would stop coming down. But they didn't, so I guess a murderer like me hasn't got the right to pray anymore. Which is why I'm here fighting, serving the Imperium in the only way I know. Being here in this missionary with all these priest types, it must be having an effect on me. I've always assumed that something's watching out for us, but I've always figured that those who can have to watch out for themselves. Because there are others who can't watch out for themselves. Just like we're here to defend the tribespeople from the damn Prethorians because all they've got are crappy knives and spears and brave warrior hearts. Which is all well and good if you're fighting amongst yourselves, but against the Scourge, it is going to be about as effective as trying to stop a Giga Cannon by holding up your hands. But I guess, when you stand there for an hour and watch your doom come down out of the stars in a constant flow, it would be nice to know that this time, when it goes wrong, and you end up with your guts torn out or talons through your chest, it really ain't the end, and there is something waiting for you, and it wasn't a waste of time. I know I've got to ditch these morbid thoughts. I've got to stay sharp, otherwise this is going to be my final trip with the Legion. It's hard though, so hard, because I was there on Olympia, I saw what they can do to a world, how they fight. There were 6,000 men and women in our legion back then. Less than 500 of us made it out. The regular troops, I heard, lost over 1 million men defending Olympia, not to mention the staggering numbers of clones that fell. There were Cybrex warforms, and even the genetically enhanced legends from Earth. All those guns, all those men and women, and we only just won the fight. So much blood. I don't have nightmares anymore, but if there's one thing that would give me nightmares, it's the Prethorians. They're just so different to us. Even the Blorg fight for territory and conquest. But the Prethorians, they just consume everything, like they're here to wipe out every single living thing in the galaxy, and they'll never stop until that's complete. Which is why I stood up on the wall last night in the freezing wind. You'd never guess that it could be so hot in the day, and yet so cold in the night. Watching them coming down, watching my doom come. Because I've got a seriously bad feeling about this one. The hairs on my neck prickle constantly, and I feel like I'm dead already. It is just my body that has yet to catch up with the plan. Which is why I'm standing here, hoping there really is something out there that listens to our prayers and comes to our aid. But I can't count on that, which is why I'm here now, as the sun starts dipping towards the jungle, ready to fight like I have never fought before, ready to do anything I can, because death is stalking me across the plains. The sun was low on the horizon, and the main assault wave has hit the walls. They attack from that direction to blind us. The Colonel was right about the flying bugs. Our air defences were more than a match. About 100 of them came flying in, diving down towards the compound, before the flak cannons opened up, blowing them out of the sky. Some managed to get closer to the keep, but the point defense cannons whirred into life, firing high explosive shells into the massive creatures, blasting them apart. That was horrible. Pieces of bloodied and charred meat dropping down on you like obscene hailstones from some sort of nightmare. No time to clear up the mess though, because the rest of the swarm had just arrived. It's hard to tell what's going on from back here, where we are in reserve, a couple of 100 paces from the wall. We've cleared a killing zone, demolishing the buildings inside the perimeter and using them to make an internal embankment around the keep, so if the Prethorians do get inside, we've got a second firing line. Most of the action seems to be going off around the gatehouse, just like the Colonel said it would. The men are 3 ranks deep on the wall on the south side, while the sisters are holding the west wall. There's about half as many sisters as there are penal troops, but they seem to be holding out better than we are. Then again, give me plasma rifles, armour and personal shields, and I'll show you just how mean and nasty I can get. It's been about a quarter of an hour since the attack began, when the Scourge get their first breakthrough. I'm watching the eastern end of the southern wall when I see a horde of bugs running around, and I realise there's no one up that end anymore. Okay squad, it's time to die, I bellow as usual, and then we're running across the killing ground towards the wall, fast as we can. The gunners in the tanks take the hint, and suddenly the air is filled with autocannon fire. High caliber explosive rounds directed at the swarm. 30 heart-pounding seconds later, and we're leaping up the steps, snapping off shots with our rifles as we close in. The supporting fire from the tanks falls quiet as we reach the top, and suddenly I'm surrounded by creatures. I see one of them is levelling its gun at me and just manage to take it down before it can fire. All of a sudden they charge us, and I rip my sword from my belt, thumb the activation rune, and hear the hiss of power as it sparks into life. The Scourge bugs are biting and clawing everything in their path, and I'd swear they were mindless if it wasn't for the coordinated fashion of their attack. As they sweep around me, I feel like I'm going to get washed away in the wave, and panic hits me. Bile rising out of my stomach as I see the fangs and the nightmarish faces all around me. One of the beasts jumps at me, its 4 upper limbs drawn back ready to attack, but I bring my sword around and the blade crashes through its carapace, sending thick alien blood splattering across my face. It tastes foul and I'm almost sick with the stench of it. I put a shot through the bulbous head of another one, and then something hits me hard in the back. This thing is latched onto me and I can't get at it. Its claws scrabbling away at my flak jacket. I hear the material tearing away, and I feel its hot breath on my neck and pointed tongue slithering over the back of my head. Its jaws latch onto my shoulder, and I try to angle my pistol round for a shot, desperately trying to get this beast off me. Because I don't want to be killed by some damn little rump bug. I'm not going to go like this. Not like this. Before it gets a killing blow, Johnson appears, one of Frank's squad. His bayonet stabbing deep into the fleshy parts of the beast, and I feel it let go and drop to the floor. There's no time to thank him though, as he gets thrown to the ground, half his face ripped off by a vicious claw. The creature is hunched over him, all 6 limbs on the ground ready to spring, and its red eyes turn to look up at me. I shoot its legs from beneath it and then drive my sword into its soft, unprotected belly. Johnson is screaming, wailing his head off, but there's no time to give him peace, no rest for the wicked as they say. We push them back, inch by bloody inch, to the edge of the wall. I see Frank pick up one of them and hurl it over the parapet, its limbs and tail still flailing around even as it plummets to its death. I look over the edge of the wall and see how they manage to get up. A pile of their bodies stretches almost 2/3 of the way up the wall, almost 10 feet high, body upon body upon body, creating a ramp of corpses for the others to run up. Grenades, blow those bodies away from the wall, I shout, as I dodge aside to avoid a barbed tail lashing towards my throat. My sword bites again as it tears through Chinitas' plates. The others heard me though, and they're all tossing grenades over the wall, trying to dislodge the fleshy corpse pile. I see Marshall standing atop the wall, gripping his rifle by the barrel and swinging it from side to side like a club, battering away at the bugs as they scuttle up the wall towards us. The grenades finally go off, sending bits of torn flesh flying, and then something gives. The pile of bodies slides out along the wall, falling to the ground, leaving smears of blood along the concrete. Then the beasts are falling back away from the wall, but it's not over yet. There's something coming at us, real fast. With long, flea-like leaps and bounds, 6-limbed creatures power towards us, almost flying over the litter of corpses leading up to the wall. We're trying to shoot as many of them as possible as they close in, but there's still 20, maybe 30 of them when they get to the base of the wall. They hold there for half a heartbeat, bunching those powerful leg muscles, and then they spring up, clearing the wall by a good 2 or 3 feet, those 4 deadly dagger talons jabbing out. One of them punches its talon into Marshall's shoulder, and he grabs its arm in one hand, holding it close. He wraps his other arm around the throat of another as it tries to push past him, and throws himself off the wall, taking both with him. A serrated claw sweeps up towards my groin, but I manage to get there with my sword, lopping off the limb. My pistol scoring a hit through one of its glassy red eyes. The rest of the fight just blurs into a waking nightmare of hacking, slashing and stabbing, kicking and shooting, punching and screaming. Bestial faces, hot breath, flailing talons and ripping claws. Blood, filth and guts slick across the walkway. A constant fight until your arms are laden with fatigue and your brain can't process the information anymore. You're just fighting from instinct and nothing else. We manage to starve off the assault, and the Scourge fall back across the plain. A cheer starts up by the gatehouse and spreads along the wall. I let my men cheer along as well, although we've got little to celebrate. The shock of the close call is beginning to creep up on me, and I look around for something to do to keep my mind occupied. I'm not thinking about how close I came to going down this time. I see the Colonel striding towards me across the walkway. His face is grim as ever. I've never seen him break into a smile. Not once. Cage, clear the dead, he bellows. I'm sending flamer teams to clear the front of the wall. Then he's gone again, issuing orders, getting the wounded divided into those that can fight and those that need to be given a soldier's grace. That's it. No thanks, no well done, Cage, you held the wall. Just orders, more work, and more fighting, and more dying to be done. I detailed some of my men to start throwing bodies over the parapet and see that the flamer teams are already at work, jets of fire turning the piles of corpses into ash and smoke. I leave them to their dirty work and seek out the Colonel. I find him outside of the keep talking to Nathaniel, the civilian administrator in charge of Deliverance, and they seem to be arguing about something. These men need treating, you cannot make them fight again, Nathaniel's complaining. If these men cannot fight, then they are dead. We need every single man we have for the walls, the Colonel replies in that low grating voice of his. It's the first time I've had a chance to get a proper look at him since the fighting began. His uniform is soaked in blood, alien and human, but none of it appears to be his. There's not a scratch on his skin, not a fracking scratch. My spine goes to ice and I try not to think about it. Nathaniel is still arguing, but the Colonel holds up his hand to stop him. These men do not deserve your pity, he says, his eyes flashing. They are thieves, murderers, looters, rapists, insubordinates and heretics. Everything you can conceive has been committed by at least one of the men here. More than that, they are traitors. They once served as free men in the great Imperial army, but they have betrayed the trust placed on them by the Empire and its citizens. They have broken the prescriptions of Imperial law with their selfishness. And I must punish them for it. Only the gods can judge us for our sins, argues Nathaniel. And only in death can we receive their judgment, the colonel completes. Nathaniel takes a long look at him and then turns away. Remember, Nathaniel, the colonel calls out after him. Serve the Empire today, for tomorrow you may be dead. And then, for just an instant, a tiny fraction of a second, there's a ghost of a smile on the colonel's lips, a minuscule hint of satisfaction, like he knows something the rest of the galaxy doesn't. Cage, he calls after me, like he must have sensed I was there, beckoning me with a finger. As I'm sure you know, that was just the first assault. I do not know when the next one will come, so stay ready. It is only an hour until the sun goes down, so I think they will wait until nightfall. I want you and your platoon to stay near the gate. This first attack was just to test our defences, to count our guns. They know we are most hard-pressed around the gate, so they'll throw their bulk of their forces there. We must hold the gate, Cage, otherwise it's all over. Stay close to the gate, but wait for my signal. Do not at any cost allow yourself to get drawn away from the gate. Is that clear? Perfectly, sir, I reply, as if I couldn't see the scenario for myself. This time we just face the smaller bugs, the expendable troops. Next time it will be much worse. They'll come at us with the warriors, hulking monsters twice as tall as a man and mean as frag. And maybe even the big bug herself, the Queen. You have your orders, snap to it. I want clear fire for everyone in half an hour. Then he's off again, shouting for Green and Jackson. The colonel was right, as I knew he would be. He's always so damn right. Nightfall comes sharply with no contact yet. It seems the Prethorians are waiting us out. I help Jackson's platoon rig up searchlights, scavenge from the tanks, and get them set up upon the wall. The constant hum of portable generators fills the air, but listening won't do us any good, because the Scourge bugs can move as silent as you like when they want to. That's one of the scariest things about them, the silence. No battle cries, no war chants, just waves and waves of them sweeping towards you. When they're fighting, they hiss a lot, but I doubt they've got any real language to speak of. They're just animals, bugs, but they're well organised. They remind me of death ants I saw on Sirius back on the core worlds. They seemed to know what each other were up to. Once one of them found you, the rest would come swarming in. Just like the scouts, finding prey for the rest of the swarm. So I'm up on the wall checking that everything is okay, when the searchlights finally blaze on. The stupid grunts start angling them as far away from the wall as they can, like they want to get the earliest warning possible. Which I can understand. The problem is, the light doesn't hit the ground before it's too weak to show anything. I grabbed the nearest one and pointed it further down, about 70 yards out. I catch a glimmer of movement and shout for the others to train their lights on that point. What I see makes my spine tingle with fear. A sensation, I might add, that I'm not all too familiar with, though far too familiar for my own liking. There's a big swarm of bugs out there, crawling through the grass on their bellies, sneaking real close. Behind them are crouched the warriors, big beasts twice as tall as a man. Their upper limbs evolved into a variety of deadly ranged and close combat weaponry. They're creeping forward, bony knee joints and chinnitus plates reflecting the white glare of the searchlight, and the light glitters off their eyes, countless shining orbs reflecting back at me. Those eyes seem dead. There's no emotion, nothing, not even a touch of hunger, which is what you'd expect considering that the race devours whole planets. The only eyes I've seen colder than those are the white fire stares the Colonel gives you, and we all know he's not really human. Mark your targets, open fire, I bellow. And I see the men opening up first with missile launchers and autocannons, and then with volleys of rifle fire. As the bugs realise the game's up, they rise out of the grass and charge towards us. A wave of multi-limbed monstrosities intent on our destruction. I take one last look as they come streaming down over the plain, blossoms of fire exploding in their midst, their snarling faces lit up as hellfire rains down upon them. I jump down the steps, 3 at a time, to get back to my platoon. Right, men, I tell them, stay steady. Follow my lead, stay tight. If you get separated, they'll pick you off no problem. When you shoot, aim for the flesh. Your rifles will have as much effect on their carapace as punching a tank. Watch your ammo count too, cause tonight it's going to be a long haul, and I don't want to face those fracking bugs with my bare hands. One final thing, don't get yourselves killed, cause otherwise I'm going to have to put up with another fresh draft of no-hope meatbags. And if you let me go down, I'm sure as hell going to come back and haunt you for the rest of your miserable lives, reminding you what a bunch of fragging slack-jawed sons of Blorg you are. That gets a smile. Personally, I couldn't give a frag about these pre-battle speeches, but some of them really need it. I can tell, just like me, they're getting awful nervous. I mean, they're a bunch of hard-nosed, thick-skinned meatheads for the most part, but even when you've got nothing but air between your ears, you just can't get over the unreasoning horror that the Scourge brings out in you. It's not like they'll kill you. They devour you. They take everything you are, everything you were ever going to be, and they change it, pervert it into something else. It's a horrible thought, I don't mind telling you. The fire is still pretty steady from atop the wall, so I guess we're holding out alright. I give myself the luxury of watching the sisters for a while, fighting alongside the natives. It is a really bizarre scene, I can tell you. You have 2,000 or so of these tribal warriors hurling spears and firing bows, their skin glistening with sweat, their booming war chants echoing down from the wall. And then there are the sisters, dead silent, methodical machines almost, which given their distaste for AI, is ironic. They fire methodical bursts from their guns, salvo after salvo pouring into the darkness, every round sending a shriek of light into the shadows from its internal propellant. Then I see a group of the natives jumping in all directions, screaming like mad, clawing at their faces and chests. That would be an acid spitter. Fires some kind of explosive bug that sprays acid all over the place, burns through near anything given enough time, and against the exposed flesh of the native irregulars, it's utterly lethal. Dragging my eyes away from the scene, trying to turn a deaf ear to the agonized screeches, I watch what's happening around the gatehouse. It's hand-to-hand fighting now, and I pick out the colonel, a glowing sword in one fist and an oversized pistol in the other. While the others are desperately hacking and slashing, he's just stepping to and fro, felling foes with every blow or shot as if the chaos wasn't going on around him. I see the shape of a warrior rise up behind him, but he just turns on the spot, fills its face full of bolts, and then chops its legs out from underneath it with 2 swings of the sword. Calm as you like, as if he was just taking a damn stroll in the morning, but he's so cold it makes the sisters seem positively emotional. Then something appears towards the gatehouse that almost makes me swallow my tongue in terror. Silhouetted against the rising moon is the figure of the Queen. It's almost 3 times as tall as the men around it. 2 massive arms are moulded into some sort of ginormous living gun, while the other 2 are enormously wicked curved talons. A thick tail lashes between its legs, tipped with a sting the size of your arm. Mandibles that could snap a man in 2, and its body is covered in Chinitas armor and bony protrusions. It fires its cannon into the packed mass on the gatehouse, blasting apart guardsmen and Prethorians alike. Its head screeches back and lets loose a horrifying bellowed screech, which seems to roll along the wall like a wave, sending men staggering in fear, making them pause in their fight so that they're cut down with ease by the smaller bugs and the warriors they're fighting. The Queen steps down from the parapet, its hoof feet sending splinters of masonry flying as it stamps down with all its massive weight. Glancing around, it fixes its evil eyes on the colonel as he mustered the men for a counterattack. They charge in, rifle rounds bouncing harmlessly off the monster's armoured hide, the bayonet snapping against its mighty armoured plates. Then one giant talon sweeps down, an icy spray of blood fountains into the air as 4 men are cut down with a single blow. The thing lashes out again, tearing across the chest of another guardsman, his ragged corpse flung from the wall to land in a limp heap in the courtyard. Surely even the colonel has met his match. He's chopping his way through a mass of warriors to get to the Queen. There's a pause in the fighting as he glances to the ground outside. He stops for a moment and looks over to where I'm positioned, and with a wave of his arms he signals us to attack. "Here we go, squad," I shout, and then start heading to the wall. I've taken perhaps 5 steps when I realise something seems wrong. I realised I'm alone. I stop to look around at the men. They're all just standing there, looking up at the Queen as it butchers through another squad of men. "What the frack is this?" I howl, and I grab Sergeant Phoenix by his lapels and push him towards the wall, but he turned around and snarled at me. "This is madness," he shouts over the cries from the slaughter. "That fragging Queen, it's gonna kill everyone. We've got to get the hell out of here while we can. Deliverance has fallen, Cage, face it." He calms down a little and fixes me with an intense stare. "There's nothing more we can do here. We've got to save ourselves. You ain't no fragging martyr, Cage, and you know it." He's right, but then something catches my eye over their heads. There are lights dropping down from the stars, carving down from orbit towards Deliverance in a long arc. I glance back at the gatehouse and I see the gate shuddering as some titanic beast tries to break in. I make a decision. Look, I tell them, pointing up at the pinpricks of light falling from space. There ain't no escaping Deliverance, boys. There's more bugs coming down. We're going to be surrounded, and there's no way we can get clear of the area before those things reach here. Cruz from Letty's squad opens his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. There ain't no getting out of this one, lads. We're all going to die in Deliverance. Now I see it two ways. You can die running from the fight like the thieves and cowards that everyone thinks we are. Sure, you can do that. Just get over the wall and hide out. But it won't take them long to find you. And when you're alone out there in the night, cowering in the grass, trying not to, a crash from the gatehouse distracts me, and I turn to have a look. The tank behind the gates is rocking heavily on its tracks now. It's going to be over any second, so I better make this quick. For frag's sake, we ain't got nothing worth fighting for now except our pride. Right now, I don't give a frag about the natives, or the Empire, or the Colonel, but what I do care about is how I'm gonna die, and it ain't gonna be with my back turned or down on my knees. I'm gonna go down fighting like a man, and if there's any men here with me, then you better come too. Otherwise you boys can just go off running, dying on your bellies like the scum everyone thinks we are. I spit on the ground in front of them and then start walking towards the gate. I'm taking a hell of a risk, because if they don't follow me, I'm going to be standing in front of that gate on my own, when whatever it is that is so big and nasty, it can batter its way through 3 feet of neutronium armor to get to me. I hear the thud of boots and they form up around me, so I guess the suckers fell for it. I look up and see that the Queen has gone from the gate tower, but I can see the Colonel still slicing away with that big sword of his. God knows how the frag he managed that. If I live to see dawn, I might just find out. With the screech of tearing neutronium, the gates are torn apart and the tank gets shunted towards us. There's a sound like a train ramming a building, and the tank is flung upwards, spinning through the air. As it crashes down, its fuel goes up in a massive fireball that shoots 100 feet into the air. Through the flames and smoke, I see a sight that will follow me to my grave. Long may it be before I get there. Through the orange glow comes this huge scourge creature. It must be 12 feet tall and easily just as wide. It's nothing I've ever seen or heard of before. It's got 4 massive talons arrayed like arms with the colossal bony extrusions across its shoulders. It's like some sort of living battering ram. Nestled between its immense shoulders, its head is fused with its chest and its large fanged mouth locked open in a permanent roar. I think a Cybrex warform would be really handy about now. Pieces of twisted metal hanging from the spines as the creature stomps through the smoke and flames like some sort of monstrous devil from the pits of hell. Without a pause, it shoulders aside the wreck of the tank, and I'm horrified to see that some of the burning vehicle tears off along one of the creature's armoured plates. The debris carries on burning, the flames crawling along the beast's carapace, but it just keeps advancing steadily, as if nothing was happening. Blow that fragger away, I shout, and everyone snaps out of the spell. Brandon opens up with the gamma laser cannon, a bolt of energy powerful enough to cripple a battle tank, scoring a wound across the beast's armoured skull. Thick, dark blood dribbled down the exoskeleton of its body. The autocannon in Frank's squad kicks in, explosive shells rippling across the beast's legs, but it still comes on, the ground shaking as those massive feet thud into the dirt. It pauses for a second, its beady eyes reflecting with the flickering flames, and fixes us with a stare. Its arms arch back, spreading wider than the length of a tank, and its carnivorous mouth opens to bellow a howl that can probably be heard off-world. The beast breaks into a run, gathering momentum. Rifle rounds, autocannon fire, and gamma laser cannon shots bounce off it as it lumbers towards us. Once more, it opens its fanged maw for another terrifying roar, but Brandon picks his moment precisely, his aim guided by the gods, I'm sure, and the next gamma laser shot lands inside the creature's mouth, smashing its head to a pulp, scattering fragments of skull across the courtyard. For a moment I think even that isn't enough to stop it, as it comes on rumbling towards us, but the rest of its body catches up with what's happening, and it slowly collapses to the ground, with dark, thick ichor oozing into a puddle around the mammoth's corpse. I breathe a sigh of relief, glad those useless fraggers decided to follow me after all. Otherwise I'd be a little more than a smear along those claws by now. Just as my heart rate drops to something below 1,000,000 beats a minute, the rest of the Scourge had started to push through the broken gate, and at the front is a group of warriors, acid spitters and virus cannons firing as they advance, men falling all around me. Acid splashes onto my arm, the pain is almost unbearable, and I stoop to grab a handful of dirt to rub the acid off. My right arm is almost numb, so I drop my pistol and grab my sword in my left hand. The lead warriors go down to fire from the gamma lasers and autocannons, but there's more and more of the things pouring through the breach now. I look around to see how the platoon is holding out, and I see that there's only about 24 of us left now. Frank catches my gaze, and I see his desperation turn into fierce pride in that single glance. It's as if a subconscious order is given. We all charge forward, throwing ourselves at the tide of beasts sweeping into Deliverance. My sword bites into alien flesh, and I hear an inhuman shriek of pain. I'm not really looking at what's happening, I'm just chopping left and right, hacking blindly, knowing that I can't miss in the press of alien creatures swirling around me. Then a massive claw comes out of the darkness, smashing me across the face. My head spins as I try to stagger backwards. I feel a sharp pain slicing across my thigh, and in my daze realize my blood is pouring down my leg and spilling into the dirt. I try to take another step, but all my strength seems to have been sapped out from me. I drop to my knees, feeling rough alien skin pushing past, leaving me for dead. And then a shadow descends over me, and I feel like I'm falling down a deep, dark hole. My ears pick up singing, my mind ringing to the sound of angelic voices, singing some holy hymn. So this is what it's like to die. There are gods after all. And I shall receive judgment just as the Colonel said I would. My thoughts are getting slow, but for the first time in 10 years of fighting, I feel proud. I didn't run this time. I stayed. I'm dying, but I went down fighting. Surely that has to count for something. I can hear voices shouting, orders being bellowed, so I guess I'm alive, and I was right about those falling lights. I try to open my eyes, but the left one seems closed up. I raise an arm, feeling incredibly weak, and touch my temple. Instant pain tells me there's a bruise the size of a small moon up there, and it's probably blood crusting up my eye. Through my good eye, I see troops running backwards and forwards, and I watch 3 heavy Annihilator pattern tanks warming up, ready to go out of the gate. I guess I'm propped up against the keep. I can feel the rough stonework poking into my back. I turn my head slowly left and right, wary of the dizziness and nausea, and I see that there's others like me, bandaged and bloodied all along the keep wall. The Colonel walks past me, and he notices that I'm awake. He strides up and stands in front of me, thankfully blocking out the bright light of the sun. I can't see his face as it's in shadow, but he's looking down at me. "Still alive then, Cage?" he demands, his voice as rough as ever. "Guess I can't kick the habit yet, sir." I try and manage a smile, but my face is just a massive ball of ache and pain. "I heard what happened," he said, dropping down onto one knee so that I can look into those cold eyes as he stares at me. "Tell me, Cage, you could have run out on me. You had the chance, and you have done it before. What made you fight?" I fixed him with my good eye, returning his gaze with a steady look of my own. "Well, sir, it's like this," I explain. "I saw the lights coming down, and I knew that these were Imperial transports. The Prethoryn spores just come straight down, whereas these had a curved trajectory, so I knew that relief was on its way and Deliverance would be saved. The thing is, though, we had to hold out, because if the Scourge got into the compound, we'd all be dead. There's nowhere to run from those creatures." The Colonel frowns at me. "So why did you tell your platoon that there were more spores coming down rather than the relief force?" "You must know why, sir," I replied. "Because it seems so obvious to me. If I had told them that help was on the way, they'd lose what little stomach they had left. They would think that they could give up and get away from here. But like I said, there wasn't any escape from Deliverance, not a chance. So I did the only thing I could. I stripped them of that false hope. I gave them nothing to live for except life itself. You see, sir, when you ain't got frag all worth fighting for, you'll still fight to be alive. Give a man a chance to back down and he'll take it, but give him nothing and he'll grab what he can with both hands and not let go for as long as he can. He'll fight his last breath just to take one more, to feel his heartbeat just one more time before he dies. If you stick a man in the middle of a fight and give him a gun, he'll fight like a cornered rat because there's nothing else he can do. That's the way the Penal Legions work. It's exactly what you do to us all. We ain't got no choice. But we fight, and we fight good, because if we don't, we're all dead. None of us wants to die, so we all do what we can. Everything that's possible, including going on your damn suicide missions, just for one more breath. It's why I fight, and it's why they fight." The colonel grunts and stood up. He turned to walk away, but I called after him. There's another reason why I fight my damnedest, sir. He spins round and looks at me, an eyebrow raised in question. I ain't going to give you the fragging satisfaction of seeing me dead just yet. Thanks for watching, folks. Obviously, this was quite a long one. If you enjoyed this style of content, please hit the like button for me and let me know in the comments. And as ever, if you want to hear another story, please click the video on screen now.